On this International Day in support of the victims of enforced disappearances, we stand together in solidarity with the victims and their families in Tibet. For decades, Tibetans have faced the oppressive might of the Chinese government, struggling to preserve our distinct cultural identity, religious beliefs, and political freedoms. Enforced disappearance, a reprehensible practice in violation of human rights, has been weaponized by the Chinese authorities to suppress and silence any opposition and dissent within Tibet. The international community recognizes enforced disappearance as a grave violation of human rights. Under the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance, it is characterized by three cumulative elements. First, deprivation of liberty against the will of the person. Second, involvement of government officials, at least by acquiescence. Third, refusal to acknowledge the deprivation of liberty or concealment of the fate or whereabouts of the disappeared person. In Tibet, enforced disappearance involves the secret abduction, arrest, or detention of Tibetans by the Chinese authorities. Tibetans are often taken from their homes, workplaces, or from public places without following any due legal process, leaving their families in despair and communities in terror. The disappearances are commonly executed under the pretext of national security or to suppress separatist movements, effectively erasing any trace of those who dare to raise their voices for basic human rights, justice, and freedom. One particular aspect of the enforced disappearance in Tibet is residential surveillance at designated locations, or RSDL. This heinous practice allows authorities to detain individuals at secret locations without formal charges, legal representation, or communication with their families for up to 6 months. Citing data from the Chinese Supreme People's Court and the testimonies of survivors and lawyers, the human rights group Safeguard Defenders has documented as many as 27,208 to 56,963 people becoming victims of the RSDL system since 2013. The numbers could be higher considering the fact that there is no transparency in data collection, and this includes cases of Tibetan victims. At least 1,000 known Tibetans have disappeared following the March 2008 uprising in Tibet, and many more of all ages, genders, and occupations continue to disappear every year. In the past decade, out of the 20 communications on Tibet received by the UN Human Rights Council, 7 involved enforced disappearances of over 50 individuals whose whereabouts remain unknown following their detention. On 17 February 2022, UN human rights experts and bodies have raised their concerns regarding the arrest, detention, and subsequent enforced disappearance of Tibetan writer Mr. Lobsang Hlundup, musician Mr. Hlundup Thakpa, and teacher Ms. Rinchen Ki in connection with their cultural activities advocating for Tibetan language and culture. Mr. Lobsang Hlundup, a 50-year-old teacher and writer, has been an active advocate for Tibetan language, history, and Buddhism. Under the pen name Dilhaden, he authored books and articles critical of Chinese rule in Tibet. In June 2019, he was arrested for creating disorder among the public due to his writings. For 18 months, he remained detained without trial and was denied visit from his family and legal representation. In June 2020, his family was summoned but not allowed to meet him. In 2021, he was sentenced to a 4-year prison term in a closed-door trial without his family's presence. However, no immediate and comprehensive information can be obtained about his current physical and psychological conditions due to heavy restrictions placed upon him. Mr. Hlundup Thakpa, a 38-year-old musician, is known for his songs promoting Tibetan identity and criticizing Chinese policies. In May 2019, he was arrested after performing a song called Black Hat, the lyrics of which were critical of Chinese policies in Tibet. Since his arrest, Mr. Lhunduk Thakpa has been held incommunicado, and his family's requests to contact him have been denied. In June 2020, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison, presumably due to the content of his song. Ms. Rinchen Ki was a teacher at a private Tibetan school in Golok, providing culturally based education. However, in July 2021, the school was abruptly shut down without any official reasons given. Disturbed by the closure, Ms. Rinchen Ki's health deteriorated and she stopped eating. In August 2021, she was arrested on charges of inciting separatism and taken to a hospital in Xining, where she did not receive proper treatment and was later transferred to an undisclosed location. Since then, her whereabouts and health status remain unknown, and her family has not been informed or allowed to communicate with her. On 14th May 1995, Gendun Chogyinima, then 6 years of age, was recognized as the 11th reincarnation of the Panchen Lama by the Dalai Lama. Shortly after this date, he and his parents were taken away from their village by members of the Chinese government. The 17th May 2023 marked 28 years since the disappearance of Gendun Chogyinima. His whereabouts and the extent to which he is able to exercise his right remain unknown until today. Two sisters, Dzumgar and Yutun, were detained on 23rd June 2022 and 11th July 2022 respectively in their hometown of Tsarang Township, Amdo County, for keeping a photo of the Dalai Lama in their home. No further details about their whereabouts were available. Go Sherab Gyatso, monk and scholar from Gidi Monastery in Ngaba County, was detained on 26 October 2020 in Chengdu for inciting secession and sentenced to 10 years at a secret trial in November 2021. He had previously been detained for his criticism of Chinese government controls in monastic education and literature in 1998 and in 2008. His fate and whereabouts remain unknown. Gwen Me, head of discipline at Ngaba's Trosit Monastery, was arbitrarily detained by police on 20th July 2021. According to a Tibetan source living in exile, he may have been detained as a result of his recitation of prayers and announcement of the quantity of prayers he had accumulated in a WeChat group. His present whereabouts and conditions are unknown. Rinchen Suldem, monk and writer from Nangxing Monastery in Ngaba County, was arbitrarily detained on 27 July 2019 and was subjected to enforced disappearance for over a year. It was only known in March 2020 that he was sentenced to 4 years and 6 months in prison for expressing political views on his WeChat account and personal website. Gompo Tenzin, singer from Diru County, was sentenced on 15 April 2015 to 3 years and 6 months in prison, in addition to deprivation of political rights for 4 years after almost a year and a half of secret detention. He was freed on August 2, 2018 after serving his term, yet details of his physical health and information on where he was being held are not available until today. Tile Tsekar, singer from Diru County, was arrested on 20 November 2013 for distributing his DVD titled Ring of Unity, containing songs on Tibetan identity, culture, and language. He was later sentenced on 19 December 2013 to 9 years imprisonment on charges related to separatist activities. His whereabouts remain unknown. Kenram and Nyak Tombo, two Tibetan musicians who collaborated with singers Pema Tile and Chakdor, have gone missing since June 2013. There had been no information about the musicians' whereabouts until today. Alleged arbitrary arrests and detention or enforced disappearance of 10 Tibetan singers and musicians were mentioned in the communication report sent to the Human Rights Council in February 2014, who were all linked to legitimate human rights activities in exercise of their basic human rights. It is crucial to recognize that this list represents only a fraction of the larger issue. Many more Tibetans have likely become victims of enforced disappearance, with their cases going unreported or unnoticed. The lack of transparency and restricted access to information in Tibet makes it challenging to ascertain the full extent of these violations. Tibetan Centre for Human Rights and Democracy calls for the help of the international community to put an end to enforced disappearances and RSDL under the Chinese government. It is imperative that the international community pay attention to these cases and raise its voice against such human rights violations. The current situation is grave, affecting thousands of Tibetans daily. We must stand in solidarity with those who exercise their rights to freedom of expression and cultural preservation. We call upon the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, along with the working groups and committees on enforced disappearance, to put an end to RSDL in Tibet. We urge the international community to hold the CCP accountable for its actions. We also address the CCP to condemn their actions and demand the immediate release of current political prisoners while putting an end to the practice of RSDL under its rule. A fair trial, transparency, and respect for the rights of these individuals are essential. Together, let us protect human rights and support those striving to preserve their culture, traditions, and identity. Lastly, we ask the CCP a simple question: where are they?